Yes, I'm Dr. Anthony Marcum. I'm with the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. I'm part of the International Institute. My main area of research interests concern a couple different areas. The first is post-war politics, how states go about establishing peace after major conflicts. Right now my major project is looking how states after interstate wars use military occupations in an attempt to accomplish their goals from the conflict and whether they succeed or fail in that. My second area of inquiry is in a theory called the logic of political accountability, which examines why autocratic leaders and democratic leaders are kind of a flip in terms of their accountability to their coalitions and how that affects foreign policy choices. Today I presented a paper looking at foreign military presence and how that affects U.S. foreign policy decision makers' likelihood of intervening into an ongoing civil conflict. We were looking at two primary indicators. The literature has suggested that a peacetime foreign military force should likely increase the chances of the U.S. intervening into an ongoing civil conflict. But the literature diverges on what precisely that force should look like. One literature argues that it should be a basing presence, that is, something we think of like what's in Germany or what we might find in Ethiopia or Somalia, the large presence of physical structures, large cash investments in creating these basic infrastructures. A second literature has emerged on international hierarchy, which suggests that troop deployment, the number of troops, is influential in the decision to intervene. Our primary finding is that the basing presence is significantly related to U.S. decision-making to intervene into an ongoing civil conflict. And part of our paper is working why that is, and we think it's because basing represents a kind of a more concrete foundation for policymakers to assess U.S. capabilities and to evaluate their commitments to the host government, rather than looking at just the simple number of troops that are involved, which can range from very low numbers, 6, 10, all the way up to several thousand. Basing relationships are actually much more important to the interests of the U.S. and to the commitments that they've made to the host state. Well, I'm working with a co-author, John Brown, and I think what motivated us is working on our separate research projects. His was on negotiation and military basing, my work on military occupations. We kept coming back to this idea that the number of troops isn't as influential as most people think on policymakers' decision-making. It was more likely the assets that were available, specifically in bases, that were what they were really interested in. The access to territory that was somewhat, difficult to gain, but once they had it, they really want to keep that. And we kind of found that discussion across military occupations when I was reviewing the literature there, concerning the fact that most times troop numbers isn't just the influential factor that they're looking at. He found similar arguments in looking at military basing in the U.S. Development of the U.S. system across since 1940 or 1938. I think it's an important topic of inquiry. One, because it's going to help us further understand some of the causes of intervention, and hopefully eventually just to understand some of the consequences of why states become involved in ongoing civil conflicts. Previous work has suggested there are a number of reasons on why states become involved, but a basing presence, which the U.S. currently has across a number of countries in the world, could lead to further involvement in future ongoing civil conflicts. So we want to be able to understand that dynamic now so that leaders can better understand their policy options going forward, and then work towards understanding how those interventions play out over time and whether or not the U.S. sees some success or failure in them.